We are on third reading of House File 1200. I have on the list Representative Doubt, Representative New Brindley, Representative Novotny, and Representative Wolgamott. Representative Doubt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I want to start with a point of personal privilege, Madam Speaker, if I can, and this is directed towards you. Earlier, we had a conversation about the doors of the chamber being locked, and I made a very strong implication that you ordered that. And while we were disappointed to see that the doors were locked and we're reading into why that happened, it was wrong of me to do that and make that implication. I know that you didn't order them to be locked, and I know that when we do a call of the House, that's the standard procedure. So every one of us should do a better job bringing us together and not dividing us, and I didn't do the best job, so my apologies to you personally. On the bill, I think I spoke a long time about the amendment. I just really feel strongly that this bill really only serves one purpose, and it's to poke at not intentionally, but unfortunately it disproportionately or negatively affects Representative Anderson's district, and it serves no purpose. It serves no purpose for Representative Wolgamott's district, and frankly, this is something, as I'm speaking right now, I'm realizing what I'm saying, but in the spirit of what I just said, which is we should bring people together instead of divide people, and I just gave a very heartfelt apology to the Speaker on the House floor. This bill does exactly the opposite. This bill divides people. It does not bring people together. This bill pits people in Representative Wolgamott's district against people in Representative Anderson's district, and that's not the sort of thing that we should do in Minnesota. We should find ways to bring people and bring Minnesotans together, to solve the real problems that Minnesotans face. And while I was sitting here, I made a list of the problems that we are not working on tonight on the House floor. And I assure you, if you call Minnesotans and you say, what are the biggest issues that you care about? You tell me what's on your mind and what I can work on here at the Capitol. Making sure that we make sure a private prison isn't in the future of this state won't show up in the top 100 on that list. I guarantee you. Or as my dad used to say when I was a kid, I guarantee you. But these are the issues we are not working on. We're not working on giving people relief from inflation. We're not working on reducing the out-of-control crime rates in our state. We're not working on giving people relief from the more than double the interest rates that they're paying on their home mortgages right now than what they were paying a year ago. We're not working on a solution to the fentanyl crisis in our state. We could be spending this time tonight saving lives. We're not working on the workforce crisis that we face in this state. We're not working on the mental health crisis that we face in this state. And we're not helping bring down housing costs for people that are trying to buy maybe their first home. We are the fourth highest tax state in the nation at a time when our government has more than double the highest surplus we've ever had. And when Minnesotans are suffering from all these other things, we are not giving them tax relief tonight, which we could be doing. We're not giving nursing homes the help that they need. They are in a crisis situation, and nursing homes in I don't know, maybe in the metro area too, but I think nursing homes in greater Minnesota are, many of them near closing, some have already closed. We're not helping them tonight. And we're not helping reduce energy costs for Minnesotans. I'm sure there's 50 other things I could put on this list. And I guarantee you, if you called every Minnesotan, I'm not sure you would get a single Minnesotan that said, you know what you should work on tonight? Preventing private prisons. Nobody's asking for a private prison. Not a single person, not a company, not anyone. There's no threat of a private prison anywhere in this state. And you're taking away the option for maybe the state government to lease a prison that's already built that we could buy or lease for pennies on the dollar. You're taking that option off the table and hurting the hopes of an already struggling community. That's what we're doing tonight? To solve no problem? Folks, we got to pay attention to what Minnesotans care about. We got to do the work that they sent us here to do. And you know what? It wouldn't hurt you once in a while to include people from this side of the aisle. Because while, you know, I don't represent the people in your community, you also don't represent the people in mine. And while I don't expect you to pass every bill that the people in my community would want, I do expect you to respect their opinion and to let me be their voice here at the Capitol. And if we together can make a bill better, take my advice. My advice on this bill, shelve it. We should refer this one back to committee and let it sit there. There is no reason to pass this bill. There's nobody asking for it. It helps no one. It serves no purpose. There is no threat. It only harms people. And that's wrong. That's not what we should do in this chamber. And that's not the work that Minnesotans sent us here to do. So let's spend our time talking about how we can help Minnesotans who are suffering from the record inflation. Let's talk about how we can keep Minnesotans safe and get these crime rates in our big cities down. Let's talk about giving them some relief from the more than double the mortgage rates right now. We want people to buy homes. We want to end homelessness and increase home ownership. We have some of the highest costs of home building in the country. And the interest rates right now are double what they were a year ago. Let's try to figure out some solutions to that. Did people stop dying of fentanyl overdoses? Is that not an issue? Is that not important? Is that something we should ignore while we work on private prisons? Why don't we do something to help the workforce crisis and get people back into the workforce? That will actually help bring inflation down. But right now, companies can't find, restaurants can't. I went to a restaurant in the East Metro a few weeks ago. They had one waitress on, and she had the whole place. Took us 30 minutes to even get a menu. We gave her a huge tip because she deserved it. She was working so hard, we didn't complain a bit. But she needs some help. We need to stop paying people not to work. We need to stop giving people so many benefits not to work. And let's give people a path back into the workforce, because that'll help solve our workforce crisis and help bring down inflation. And we've got a mental health crisis that we have ignored for far too long. We've got people that are sitting in emergency rooms on mental health holds for 100 days sometimes. And we all know that an emergency room is the most expensive, least effective place to treat somebody with a mental health issue. That's what we should be working on tonight, instead of a bill that impacts no one, will help no one. Fourth highest tax state in the nation, depending on what you look at. And some were the highest, and some were first, second, third, fourth. I kind of average, I like to say fourth. Generally, I think New York, California, and Hawaii are higher than us. We have a 30% surplus in our budget right now, and we haven't given any tax relief back to Minnesotans. That's what we could be working on tonight. Nursing homes closing. The people who need us the most, who have given us the most in our lives, who are at a critical point in their life and need a little help, need a safe nursing home with good staff. That's important. The workforce crisis is why they're closing as well. We can't neglect those people. Those are the people we should be helping tonight. Not have a bill on the floor for hours that helps no one. And energy costs going through the roof. I don't know, text me if you got more ideas. This is the list I came up with in 20 minutes. These are the things I'd be working on if I was in charge right now. And these are the things I want to help you work on. So if you're ready to help Minnesotans, and I guarantee you if you call Minnesotans, you'll find this list and probably almost every one of these issues in their top 10. That is not where you will find private prisons. So together, let's roll up our sleeves and do the work that Minnesotans sent us here to do. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to make a motion to send this bill back to committee. I would love to. That's where it should go, to die. Pass it out of here if you want, but when we're talking about putting this in an omnibus bill, let's just forget about it, because there is no need to pass it, and it's only personal. And it may not feel personal, the intent may not be personal, and I'm not questioning anybody's motives, but it is incredibly personal for the one community that this bill could impact. And it only could impact one community. And a member of this chamber should not bring a bill that so much and so importantly impacts another community on this House floor. That's not what we should do. In the spirit of the way I started this conversation, of how I failed to bring us together earlier, let's remember, and I'll be honest with you, sometimes you got to eat crow. How many of you are willing to stand on the House floor and apologize for something that you said wrong? We all make mistakes. This bill being here on the floor is a mistake. It should not be here. I'm not looking to rub anybody's nose in that, but it would be okay if this bill just disappeared and went away. It is a tough thing to do, right? But practice that. Even if you are maybe like, well, I don't know if I offended that person, go over and talk to them and just say, you know what? I hope that what I said wasn't personal and you didn't take it that way, because I certainly didn't mean it that way. Apologize. And I asked earlier when I made my comments about the amendment when that was up, that I had a challenge for you, Representative Wolgamott, I want you to take Paul Anderson to dinner in the next few weeks and talk to him about his community and his, the people that used to work at that prison who haven't worked in a long time. Because those people in that community are important. And this, thank you. And this bill impacts those people. And I don't mean to tell you what to do. I'm not trying to talk down to you or chide you, but
Madam Speaker.
Representative Wolgamott.
Madam Speaker, point of parliamentary inquiry.
Please state your point about parliamentary
Madam Speaker,
inquiry.
is it the custom and usage of this chamber to engage members one-on-one in debate, or do we work through the Speaker?
Representative Wolgamott, both the Speaker Pro Tem and the former Speaker understand all debate should be addressed through the Speaker. Representative Doubt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Wolgamott. And it's not my intention. I'm not asking you to yield. I'm not playing games on the House floor. But I do want you to know that this bill is a personal issue. And while there might be people in your district who work at your prison that think it's important, and it is okay for one member of this House,
Madam Speaker,
in debate to talk directly to another member of this House about an issue that's in a bill.
Representative Long, please state your point of order.
Madam Speaker, Mason's Section 124, avoiding personalities. Representative Doubt is speaking to personalities and speaking also to motives on this bill.
Representatives, it's going to be a very long night if we have to engage in points of order. So let's all just observe the custom and usage, all the rules, all the things in Mason's that we rely upon, and stay focused on the debate before us. Representative Doubt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I fear that the two members that just rose were probably not in the chamber and heard the spirit of the beginning of my speech, where I very kindly and very appropriately apologized for my bad behavior. And it's interesting to me that I'm trying to give a heartfelt speech for somebody to understand that this issue very personally impacts another member's district. We already talked about how that district went from a population of 2881 down to 1367 in 21 years. Granted, I think we all know that the prisoners were part of that population. They do get counted in the census. But also there was a very lot of employees who worked there who had to move out of that community because they couldn't find other work. So this is something that impacts these communities. And it is a real thing. If you pass this bill, the company that owns this prison is going to go to the county assessor and they're going to say, look, they just basically said in state law that we can no longer use this facility. I want you to reduce the taxable valuation of this property. They will do that, and they will be right, and the county auditor will reduce it, and this town of 1,300 people will get kicked again, and they will lose potentially a third of their revenue, which comes from this facility. There is a win-win here. We could actually reopen this facility, let the state lease it. We could let the state buy it for pennies on the dollar of what they could open another facility for. It would be 101 years newer than our oldest prison that's still in use. And it would help the people in this community and provide some much needed jobs. Union jobs, by the way, as my amendment clearly said. But unfortunately, that amendment was shot down. It was an opportunity for us to really be compassionate about people in a community, the one singular community that this bill would impact. And we missed that opportunity. So I'm going to ask everybody to vote against this bill. Unfortunately, it solves no problem. This hasn't been a problem, it isn't a problem, and there's no even discussion of it being a problem in the future. It's not something we should be spending our time on tonight. We should be working on the problems that Minnesotans want. I'm going to ask everybody to vote no on this bill, and let's please show each other a little more respect. Thank you.
The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, we weren't asking for private prisons tonight. We had a couple of different amendments on the floor, and those amendments did not ask for private prisons. We were asking to have state-run prisons be allowed to be housed in private facilities. State-run prisons. Madam Speaker, will Representative Wolgamott yield to a question?
He will yield. Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It hadn't even occurred to me until Representative Daudt mentioned it earlier. However, Representative Wolgamott, does the fact that most of the auditor's office is housed in private space make the auditor's office a private enterprise?
Representative Wolgamott.
Madam Speaker, Representative New Brindley, this bill has nothing to do with the auditor's office. It is about banning private prisons in the state of Minnesota.
Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will Representative Wolgamott continue to yield?
He will yield.
Thank you. Representative Wolgamott, most of the Secretary of State's office, in fact, it was, I've got my directions mixed up that way. It used to be housed at the Highway Federal Credit Union building, just a couple blocks away over here. Privately owned building, and in fact, they got kicked out eventually because Highway expanded. Good for them. And they now lease new space. But the fact that they were leasing private space, did that make them a private enterprise?
Representative Wolgamott.
Madam Speaker, Representative New Brindley, there is a big difference between the work that is done by the Office of the Secretary of State and the work that is done by the Department of Corrections. The Office of the Secretary of State manages our elections. They safeguard our elections, and I'm really proud that under their leadership, Minnesota continues to be in the top of the country in voter turnout. Shout out to Secretary of State Steve Simon. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, Representative New Brindley, there's a big difference between the work that the Office of the Secretary of State does and the work that the Department of Corrections does. The Department of Corrections is in charge of incarcerating people, and luckily we have good public safety workers who give their heart and souls into making sure that the people who are in the custody of the Commissioner of the Department of Corrections to making sure that they are able to get the correcting that they need to be able to come back out into our society, whether it's mental health or rehab or other forms of treatment. Our public workers work really hard every day to make sure that we are reducing recidivism rates, and that once people are no longer in care of under the custody of the Commissioner of the Department of Corrections, that they're able to go back out into our communities and be successful human beings, put their lives back on the right track. So to your question, Representative New Brindley, I am aware of what private property ownership is, but there is a big difference between what the Office of the Secretary of State does and what the Department of Corrections does. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really appreciate you mentioning that in our prisons we have a lot of public workers who do really good work there, which is what we propose to continue. We just propose to do it in a facility that the state can lease instead of own, which is really a big deal because clearly housing state enterprises in privately owned facilities does not make them private enterprises. Housing a state prison in a privately owned facility does not make it a private prison. It makes it a state prison, making really smart, good decisions by the commissioner to use facilities that already exist and are already in good shape and that are maintained by other people who must maintain them per lease agreements. That's typically what happens. But leasing a building does not make an enterprise private. That's not how that works. They're still public facilities run by a commissioner, staffed by public employees doing good work. And so I cannot for the life of me understand why we even have this bill before us. We do this a lot here at the legislature. We are offering solutions in search of problems. That's what this bill is. This is a solution in search of a problem. There's literally no problem. This has not existed. The private prison has not existed in the state for many, many years. There's no current proposal for a private prison to be housed in the state of Minnesota, to exist in the state of Minnesota. This is a solution in search of a problem. However, we are taking a really good solution off the table for problems that we do have. And Madam Speaker, I'm wondering if Representative Wolgamott would yield to one more question.
He will. Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm wondering, Representative Wolgamott, if you know how much money we passed in the bonding bill for the Department of Corrections.
Representative Wolgamott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative New Brindley. I'm not sure what the bonding bill has to do with this right now, but I don't have that number. I'm sure I could get that to you easily. I don't have that number in front of me. One thing I do want to say, though, is even though when you were talking about Representative Dowd's amendment, even though we would be allowing public safety workers to work in that facility, when Representative Dowd posted his amendment, I brought it to the public safety workers that I've been working with on this bill who have been asking me to put this bill forward. And they said that they did not want that because that facility is too far away from trauma centers. They would not feel safe working in that facility. So I hope you don't misrepresent the motives or the intentions of the workers that we're working with in this bill with your comments on the floor tonight. But anyway, Representative New Brindley, I do not have that number available in front of me, but I'm sure that I can work with Chair Lee to get you that number.
Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We'll come back to this in a minute, this idea of like impugning the motives of the workers you've been working with, because that is really interesting, and we'll revisit that in a second. But I will tell you, I did check into this, and we just passed $34.3 million for the Department of Corrections. But do you know what the governor's ask was? $112 million. We have massive, very expensive needs in our prison systems. Two of those proposals were for expansion. Two of the requests for additional money for the Department of Corrections was to expand facilities. We have an existing facility. We have an existing facility. And yet, the governor thought we needed $112 million more to preserve the assets we have, to expand state assets, and again, the state assets that we're not taking care of now, and yet we're going to say there should be no opportunity to use a perfectly good building in the state of Minnesota. Now let's go back to this idea of impugning the motives of the workers you've been talking to. Like, frankly, give me a break. I'm sure that the workers you've talked to care a lot about this in the prisons that they work in. But you know who else cares a lot about this? The hundreds of workers who no longer have jobs in Appleton, Minnesota. You know who also cares about this? Representative Zalesnikar I mean, good for her. I hadn't even thought, like, what did this do to the town when this prison closed down? They lost half their population. So they could employ 350 people at the prison. I think that's the number I heard. But they lost, what, 2,500, or excuse me, no, 1,000, 1,500, 1,800 residents out of that town? They lost over half the population of that town. And do you know why? It's because when you lose those 350 jobs, you don't just lose those 350 jobs. You know what else closes down? The local cafe. Because that business owner can no longer make that business work. Because the people aren't there. You know what else closes down? The local pharmacy. The local pharmacy that's owned by a private business owner, probably employing 2-3 people maybe at a small pharmacy, but that pharmacy closes down because there's no longer the people in the town to support it. I could go on and on about the businesses that close down and the destruction that happens to this town because you decided this facility should not be allowed to exist, should not be allowed to function. Over half the population of that town. And you sit here and act like it's no big deal. But it certainly mattered to the people who had those jobs. It certainly matters to the people in that town who supported the people who lived there through their small businesses. But we come into this chamber and we're so cavalier. We got a solution. We got a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And we're going to continue to screw over this small town. We're going to take away 30% of their revenue, 30% of their tax revenue. We're going to screw them over because we are cavalier. And you know what? I got bills to write. I got bills to pass. I got solutions. There may not be a problem, but I sure got a solution. People are hurt by what we do in this chamber. Real lives are affected by what we do in this chamber. And you know what? There's a lot of good we can do, and there's a lot of good we do. We do good work here that impacts real people. But it makes me crazy when we are so cavalier about hurting people. And this is not theoretical. This is not theoretical. Half the people in that town are gone. And it's not because they just worked in that facility. That means people lost businesses. That means people had to sell homes. That means people had to move their kids to new schools. All because we don't think the state should be able to lease a building. I'm dumbfounded. I am dumbfounded. But I am begging you to use some common sense on this one. You're hurting people tonight. You're hurting real people. The 1,300 residents that are left in this town, I think it was in that ballpark, 1,300 people left in this town. What are they going to do when they lose that $800,000 in tax revenue? What are they going to do? Because you know what? I get it. You might represent a big town. You might represent cities and suburbs down here, but not all of us do. My towns are small. I live in the biggest town in my district, 10,000 people. $800,000 is a huge hit to my town. In my towns, $800,000 is a police department. That is an entire police department. And that is the direct result of what we are doing tonight. There are real consequences to the solution we are passing to a problem that does not exist. Members, I know you're distracted. I know we're not paying attention, but what we're talking about affects real people tonight. What we are talking about is $800,000 to a town of 1,300 people. And I sure hope, you know what? We got mayors in this chamber of small towns. I'd love to hear what $800,000 would mean to these small towns. We are hurting people tonight by solving a problem that does not exist. Please, I am begging you to have some compassion. Look beyond the borders of your cities. Look beyond the borders of your towns. Understand that not all of us represent the populations that you do. Not all of us have the commercial industrial base that you do. It doesn't exist. And to lose the tax revenue from a facility like this is going to be devastating for real people. Please vote no on this bill.
The member from Sherburne, Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. I have a confession to make. It's not nearly as devious as the confession that Representative Davis made a couple of weeks ago, but I'm a hardcore listener of a podcast called Garage Logic. And yes, it's by Joe Souchere. He's a columnist for the St. Paul Pioneer Press. And as I was told I'd be given the closing for this bill, several things made me think about what I was going to say. And the first thing was keyed off by Representative Niska talking about break glass in a case of emergency. And one of the sayings Joe has is, case of emergency, break glass, smoke Luckies. The other thing Joe talks about is the problem with liberals is they can't link. And as everyone talked about different things on different amendments in this bill, I thought part of the problem is we're not linking. We can't connect one thing with another. And I thought, I'm going to link these things. I'm going to link what Representative Niska said to what Representative Swedzinski said about the schools, and then what so really brought it together was what Representative New Brindley talked about with the remodeling of the state office building. And Representative Wolgamott, I'm going to ask you to yield to one question, and it's really simple, and it's not a gotcha question. I know you know the answer. You were on corrections when I first came in. So, Representative Wolgamott, would you just yield for one question?
He will yield. Representative Novotny.
Representative Wolgamott, give or take a couple hundred, what is our current bed space for correction for the DOC in the state? How many prison beds do we have?
Representative Wolgamott.
Madam Speaker, Representative Novotny, I don't have that exact number before me. I'd be happy to get it to you. But while I have the microphone, Representative Novotny, I want to thank you for the words of support that you said about this bill as lead of the Public Safety Committee. Thank you for your words of supporting this bill. It was a voice vote out of the Public Safety Committee, and I know you supported this bill. I've actually went back and I watched the committee in 2021 when Representative Winkler brought this bill before the Public Safety Committee in 2021. And I appreciate your words of support for this bill in 2021. There actually was a roll call vote. You had the courage to vote for it.
Madam Speaker, point of order.
In 2021.
Representative Stout, please state your point of order.
I think we all know that Representative Novotny's position can be spoken by Representative Novotny, and Representative Wolgamott is trying to suggest whether he supports it or not. Whether this member supports this bill or not is up to that member, and he'll push his button when he wants to. This is completely out of line, completely out of line.
Representative Dowd, we can't talk about who should take who out to lunch, and we can't talk about who should take who out to dinner, and we should avoid talking about members' voting history as well. Representative Wolgamott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Speaker Hartman. I believe the number's in the light 10,000s, give or take, about 10,000 beds. And that's a number. I'm going to link to that in a little bit. And the link to that was, we're not looking forward. We're not looking forward because Representative Swedzinski brought up when we used to have the section schools and how there used to be little one-room schools. And when I think of Appleton, I think of Little House on the Prairie. It's not that far away, Walnut Grove. If you haven't been there for the pageant, it's great. Take your kids. And I say that because when they had the one-room schools back then, they would have never imagined that a couple hundred years down the line that you wouldn't be doing a one-room school, that you would put your kids on something they'd never heard of called a bus. Hopefully it's a diesel bus, not an electric bus, because Appleton's in the middle of nowhere and we don't want to run out of electricity and freeze in the winter. They wouldn't have never imagined that they would be driving to some of these school districts that are consolidated and going 20, 40, 50 miles away to a school district. They wouldn't have imagined that, just like right now we can't imagine having consolidated jails. And my link to that is, they also wouldn't have imagined that we'd be sitting on the floor having people that are watching this, and Representative Dowd likes to use the line, for all you people watching at home, hey, guess what? People are at home watching because we're getting people texting us or contacting us through Facebook, giving us talking points. And it was brought to our attention, the biennium budget from the DOC that was just released this week. And the reason I asked about the beds that we have, this is from the DOC. It says, the current DOC base budget was based on a projected population of 7,894 beds. Current populations indicate the estimated average daily population of 8,686 beds in 2024, 9,057 beds in fiscal year 25. And in the proposal, it says the department estimates an additional 1,291 beds in fiscal year 2026. Now, I was fairly bad at math, so I used my calculator. 9,057 in fiscal year 25 equals 10,348 beds in fiscal year 26. Which to me means we're going to be back up to our pre-COVID filled up prison system. Now, if we take and just make one assumption and go one more year, putting out for fiscal year 27, that'll put us at 11,639, which is give or take 1,300 beds that we don't have. We don't have. And my final link of that is to Representative New Brindley was talking about the state office building. We've got to be on our third year of the state office building being proposed, roughly. We're doing bore samples this week. We're just doing bore samples on one state office building that we've been planning for 3 years. if it takes, we haven't even broke ground on a state office building, that will probably be 5 years. We're going to need bed space for prisoners, and we don't have them. And we're turning that option all the way off. I've been in St. Cloud Prison. I've been in Stillwater Prison. The word that I'm always struck with when I went into the building for work was medieval. They're not fun places to be. Not that they're supposed to be, but that's where we're at. And we've got aging buildings, and we don't have enough, and we're going to need more, and we know it. And I'm just going to close with two final thoughts. If you only have a hammer for a tool, everything looks like a nail. Why are we taking these tools out of our box? And the last thing I'd like to close with, Representative Wolgamott, I understand that you have spoken with the DOC workers, and they have spoken out against this. I come to it from the county standpoint, and I'll reiterate my local control options. I'm going to guess you didn't speak with the county employees. You didn't speak with anybody from the county side that might want to use this facility. I don't understand why you would limit the counties to be able to have that as an option. And for that reason, I recommend a no vote. Thank you.
The member from Sherburne, the author of the bill, Representative Wolgamott.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Before I get to my closing remarks, I would like to thank the legislators in this chamber who helped make sure that we got this bill to where it's at today. I would like to thank Chair Moeller for giving this bill a hearing and for making sure that this was a top priority, that we're reducing recidivism rates by making sure that we ban private prisons as quickly as possible here in this session. And I'd like to thank Lee Novotny for his comments in committee to make sure that we got this in support of this bill, to make sure that we could get it to the General Register on a roll call vote. Thank you for that, Lee Novotny, and thank you also for the amendment that you brought forward tonight. It was a good amendment. I was grateful that you and I had the chance to talk about it last night, and I'm glad that that's going to be a part of the bill that we vote on here in just a couple of moments. In closing, Madam Speaker, when I had my opening remarks, I talked a lot about the negative things, the negative outcomes that come from private prisons in Minnesota. But now, in closing, I want to talk about the positive outcomes that come from the hard work of our public safety workers in our correctional facilities. Corrections is tough work. It's hard. The average lifespan of a Minnesotan is 81 years old. But for our corrections officers, it's 67 years old. And that's because they give it their all every day to making sure that the people who have committed crimes, who are under the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections, they give it their all to make sure that they get the treatment and the rehab and the programming they need to be able to come out of our correctional facilities, go back into society, and be successful law-abiding citizens. That's who this bill is about, Madam Speaker. That's why we need to ban private prisons in Minnesota. And with that, I ask for a green vote.
The clerk will take the roll on the bill.
Yeah, like something like that. Oh, there you go. Yeah. think so.
Will the chief clerk please call the names of the members who have not yet voted?
O'Neill.
O'Neill, no.
O'Neill votes no. Pryor.
Go ahead, Lori.
Pryor, aye.
Pryor votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 70 ayes and 62 nays, the bill passes as amended and its title agreed to. The vote was 70 to 61. The bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to.